Welcome in. My name's Jason Priester from the Clemson Insider. Appreciate everybody that is joining in with us here tonight. It's rivalry week. The game you wait all year for. It might have lost a little bit of its shine. Okay, well, a lot of its shine, but it's still the annual rivalry game. And despite disappointing seasons, I still think there's a lot on the line for both of these teams, man. If you're Clemson or if you're South Carolina, you could really say it about both, because both these teams kind of went into the season with kind of playoff hopes. Both ranked inside the top 20. Clemson ranked inside the top 5. I think South Carolina was top 15 in one of the polls, if I'm remembering right. But it's just not going according to plan. It's for either team. South Carolina's already fired 2 coaches, the offensive line coach, the offensive coordinator. I feel pretty confident in saying Clemson's going to see some coaching changes of their own once the season concludes. But no matter how bad the season's gone, if you're either one of those teams, this is one that you want to win. If for no other reason, just you go into the offseason with some momentum, optimism, however you want to term it, because while South Carolina's not going to a bowl game, Clemson is. That nobody's going to remember that bowl game. Nobody outside of being in the moment. Nobody cares about a third-tier bowl game that's being played in Texas or New York or wherever. So for all intents and purposes, this is your biggest game left on the docket. And then you also want to win it so you could you have some glimmer of hope to sell to some of these recruits once you hit the unpause button on that, because Clemson's kind of hit the pause button on the 27 class for the moment, for the most part anyways. You get to sell a glimmer of hope to anybody you target in the portal. It's easier to sell coming off a win than it would be coming off a loss. Let's put it that way. I thought last year Clemson's offensive line was going to have all kind of issues going up against that defensive front of South Carolina's, and I thought they ended up holding up pretty well. They actually surprised me, to be quite honest, but I got the same concerns going into this game. Didn't quite have them at the level I have them now 2 weeks ago before Jacobs and Parks went down. But, man, I just did not see anything from the offensive line against Furman that, you know, would lead me to be optimistic about what they're gonna do in this game. Clemson was not able to run it very well between the tackles against Furman. And that's a team you should just absolutely own the line of scrimmage against, particularly in the short yardage. They just weren't very successful. I know I think Adam Randall only had 2 carries, but you'd like to see more production than that. And to me, that kind of falls on the guys up front, particularly on the interior. I've just not been overly impressed with Colin Sadler or Harris Sewell, even before Sadler got hurt. Not sure he's been 100% all season, to be quite honest. But, and Lentham's kind of been up and down. But I didn't see a whole lot that made me overly optimistic about what Clemson's going to be able to do running the ball, which in turn means you're going to have Cade Klubnik win it. And that doesn't make me very optimistic either. Clemson's offense has not been very successful in this game last year, year before last. So that means they've not been very successful against the South Carolina defense as long as Cade Klubnik's been the starting quarterback. Heck, you can go back, to DJ's last year too, when he was 9 of 29 passing or whatever it was. Don't think this South Carolina defense is nearly as good as last year's. Still think they're pretty solid up front. And of course, they got Dylan Stewart still, but I don't think they are what they were last year. But I just don't have a ton of confidence to go out in Klubnik to go out there and actually win the game. I just don't. If I had to pick it right now, I'm probably going with South Carolina. Fortunately, I don't have to pick it till Friday. But if I had to pick it today, I'm probably going with South Carolina. But I could see this thing playing out in different ways. I could see South Carolina winning a close one. I could see Clemson winning a close one. I could actually see South Carolina end up blowing Clemson out. The one thing I can't see is Clemson blowing them out. Unless they just make a bunch of mistakes, which they have been known to do a time or two this season. They are absolutely abysmal up front. Their offensive line is horrid. There's a reason why their offensive lineman or offensive line coach has been fired. There's only 4 other teams in the country that's given up more sacks than those guys. So it's not like they're, and everybody, Sellers has got like 200 and something rushing yards. He got a big chunk of those against Coastal the other day. He's averaging 2 yards a carry or something. They've got 300 and something lost yardage from sacks. So, they've been pretty abysmal too. They don't have all that potent of a running game, but they do have that big, fast receiver in Nick Harbor. I'm talking about track speed, fast. And knowing how Clemson's secondary's fared in the past 6 weeks, been a little bit better, the past couple games with Corey and Gibson on the field, but still, what's the over-under on Nick Harbor getting behind that coverage, Saturday? I'd set it at 2, at least 2.5. I just think if Clemson's going to win, they're going to have to put some points on the board, and they've not been very good at doing that with Cade Klubnik at quarterback in these rivalry games. You can tell me what you think, agree, disagree. Couple of big wins for the basketball team down in Charleston over the weekend. Couple of nail biters, man. They win a tough, grinded out physical game against West Virginia, and then on Friday, and then they come back and beat Georgia in overtime yesterday. Those are 2 really gritty wins. Only loss so far on the season is to Georgetown on the road, and they're probably they've probably been better here in the early season than I thought they would be. They've absolutely held up better physically than I thought they would. Justin Porter was really good in Charleston after not playing so well up against Georgetown. He's had a couple of really good games. Got a lot of depth there. There's a lot to like about that basketball team. All right, man, before we jump into it, I want to thank our sponsors over at A-Glass. They've been with us for over a year now, man. Long-time sponsor. 2 locations right here in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. They can take care of all your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair. You can get yourself a free quote, myaglass.com. Oh, we got somebody here. It must be in the West Coast. I'm just kidding. It's evening at my house, but good evening to you nonetheless. Defensive end is getting really thin. Yeah, it was already pretty thin. Was Caden Story playing more edge in his dozen or so snaps versus Furman? He was making some moves when I noticed him. Yeah, he was lining up at end. Yes. They kind of technically moved him to end, I think before last season, but he's, at the practices I've been at, which we don't get to see a lot. I've still seen him working with the defensive tackles, but he was lining up at end late in that game Saturday, and Darian Mayo is actually now the backup. With Shaheem Lawson being out, tough break for him. Dabo, did they take all the starters except Shaheem off the field, and he gets hurt on the very next play. Turns out he ended up putting all the starters back in because he got pissed off that Furman had like 200 yards in the third quarter, and he sends all the starters back in the fourth. So he was coming back in regardless, but just a brutal way for it to end for probably, one of your top two, 3 pass rushers. He's absolutely one of the top 2 or 3. I mean, you can rank him wherever you want, but he's definitely in the top 3. He's been pretty effective this year, and with South Carolina's offensive line issues, that's a loss that hurts. It just seems like if you're making out a pros and cons list when it comes to this game, and you're checking off some stuff on Clemson's side, man, there's a lot of cons, not so many pros, and Shaheem Lawson would be one of the first ones. This right here, crazy week where fans from both question if their team can win the game. Yeah, I have not seen a lot of Clemson fans that have much faith in the Clemson's ability to pick up a win here. I got a buddy of mine that's a diehard South Carolina fan, and he texts me Sunday telling me he's got no idea what to expect. I've got no idea what to expect. I guess one positive is Clemson's been pretty successful in the games in Columbia. They tend to do pretty well there. It's been a minute since Clemson's lost in Columbia. You'd have to go all the way back to 2013, I do believe. So it's been over a decade, if I'm remembering that right. Clemson's all-time numbers on the road there are pretty good, but you got to keep in mind all the games were played in Columbia, up until the 60s or whatever it was. But yeah, it's a very, there's a very odd feeling or weird feeling around this game because even in the past when both teams have been bad, I don't remember, the majority of fans on each side expecting their team to lose. It just feels like the way these seasons have played out, for each team, the fans are more worried about getting to the end and seeing what changes are going to be made. Like again, South Carolina's already fired 2 assistants, so you got 2 new ones coming in. Is Beamer going to make any more moves? What are the moves Dabo's going to make, and who's he going to bring in to replace the guys he gets rid of? It just seems like fans are more interested in that type of stuff and and who's Clemson bringing in from the portal and who might leave through the portal. Yeah, they just don't seem to be placing a whole lot of emphasis on this game when you compare it to years past. Feel like we can win. Oh, I think Clemson can win too. I mean, there's nothing scary about that South Carolina team. I've been saying it for weeks. I had somebody on here last week telling me that South Carolina's offense was better than Clemson. There is no statistical category you can look at to back that up. You know, don't get me wrong, Clemson's offense hasn't been lighting up the scoreboard or anything either, but South Carolina's had some issues on the offensive side of the ball. If they had a competent offense, they'd probably have twice as many wins as they got right now. So, I mean, there's nothing about South Carolina that should scare anybody. I mean, I get it. Sellers ran all over him last year. He's still there, and he's still got the capability of running all over anybody. They've just not really cut him loose a whole lot this year. Different guy calling the plays now. I didn't get to watch their game against Coastal Carolina. Outside of the final numbers, I have no idea what they did. So I imagine the game plan will be a little bit different than what it would have been if if Shula was still there calling the plays. But I mean, I absolutely think Clemson can win. I just don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to do the things necessary to win. If their O-line is so bad, maybe TJ Parker will finally live in the backfield like the Virginia Tech game last year. If TJ Parker plays the way he did against Louisville, I think Clemson's chances increase because I thought he was really good against Louisville. I mean, he didn't have a bunch of sacks or TFLs, but I thought he was really disruptive. I don't put a whole lot of credence in what they did against Furman, but I never even went back and watched it. I hadn't even looked at PFF grades or anything, so I don't have no idea how they even graded him against Furman. But I thought he played really well against Louisville. If you get that TJ Parker, yeah, I mean, I like your chances better because South Carolina has they've given up 38 sacks this year, 3.45 sacks per game. Only Stanford, Auburn, Ball State, and Troy have allowed more sacks than South Carolina. TJ Parker opts out for the bowl game. I'm not so sure if that's winnable, no matter who we play. There are going to be a lot of opt-outs for the bowl game. I don't care what those guys are saying publicly. There's going to be some hard conversations had with agent, player. There's got to be some opt-outs. Again, that's why I think nobody cares about the bowl game because I'm factoring opt-outs into that thing, man, and especially if you end up playing some bottom feeder Big 12 team or golly, the way Clemson season going, you might end up playing a G5 team. Wouldn't that be something? But there's going to be opt-outs, and he would be definitely one of the ones at the top I'd have at the top of the list. I mean, there's just, outside of just playing for the love of a game, man, there's just no real benefit, man. I don't know that the reward outweighs the risk. You get hurt in a meaningless game like that, and man, it can cost you a lot of money. I mean, one thing, like GT says here, one thing it will do, it'll give you a opportunity to get a look at a lot of the younger guys. Like I already see, and I was expecting all the Chris Denson stuff. I already see a lot of it in the comments over here. We finally got a good look at Denson the other night, and he did exactly what I thought he could do with his legs. They didn't really ask him to do anything passing the ball, but guys like that, I think we'll get a lot better looks at in bowl games or in a Clemson bowl game anyways. My gut says Cade will play in the bowl game. Wouldn't bet on it. I think Cade is a guy that probably will play. Maybe not all 4 quarters, but at least some. He just, I don't know. He just kind of strikes me as that guy. He's not first or second round. He's not getting a first or second round grade, whether he plays in it or not. Because maybe a guy like Adam Randall plays. There'll be a handful that do, but there's going to be some that don't too. Do you think Sammy Brown will be on the team next year or enter the portal? My kid wants his jersey for Christmas, but is scared he won't be here. If there was a guy that I feel, you can never say never to these things, man, because you never know who might leave and who might not leave. And I'm expecting Clemson to be pretty active in the portal in the offseason. I know there are a lot of fans that are not going to believe it till they see it. And being active doesn't mean you're going to sign a bunch of them, but I believe they're going to try to be active in the portal. I think they've got every effort or every intention on doing that. But I think Sammy Brown's a guy that loves it at Clemson. I was told a story about his recruitment a while back that, if you followed Sammy's recruitment, Georgia was supposed to be like this legitimate contender and right on Clemson's heels. And some of those national recruiting guys made it even sound like Georgia might have taken the lead late. And then Clemson comes out on top in the end. But I've got it from a very good source that thing was never even close, that Sammy always knew where he wanted to go. And the only reason his recruitment played out as long as it did is because he just didn't want to tell some of those other schools and coaches who he had developed those strong relationships with. He didn't want to tell them no. So if there's one that I would say is probable when it comes to coming back, he'd be one. But I certainly cannot guarantee it. And I will add this: there is no name on this roster that would outright shock me by entering the portal. Not one. Do you think letting Denson show out may give another school ideas of getting him a better NIL deal? He hired Drew Rosenhaus as his agent a few weeks ago. So I mean, he's got one of the more aggressive agents and one of the better agents out there. What he did the other night certainly can't hurt his opportunities when it comes to other teams making a run at him. But he's still, he did not show anything as far as his ability to pass the ball or really, be the field general. They ran a bunch of QB draws and let him throw a couple screens and an RPO. So, I mean, they didn't really ask him to do anything in the passing game. And if you watch him throw it, man, he's got some work he needs to do on his mechanics. As a left-hander, he's always going to have that long, winding delivery. But he can get that cleaned up a little bit still. And I think he looks like he's already made a lot of progress with it. But he also has a tendency to throw it flat-footed, which is something else he's got to work on. But yeah, I could see that happening. I certainly, let's put it like this. I do not see, I wouldn't be comfortable going into next season with any quarterback currently on the roster being named a starter. I think Clemson absolutely has to go out and get a guy. If you believe Denson can be that guy, then you have to find a way to sell him on sitting and developing for one more year, even if that means paying him a little bit more than you want to. I mean, obviously, you don't want to overspend on a backup quarterback, but you have to go find a guy that you can plug in until Denson is, ready to lead. And I'm not sure, at least, I'm not sure he will become game one. I think he's made a lot of progress. I think he's still got a little bit to go or a little bit of a ways to go. It's going to be a big spring for him, but that's a decision they got to make right now. They don't have the luxury of waiting until after the spring. They got to go out. They got to decide whether they're going to go get a quarterback. Now, I lean towards thinking they're going to. So, I mean, and if they do that, again, it comes down to whether you can sell him on sitting another year. And by then, you got the Hughley kid coming in who looks like he looks like one of the better quarterbacks Clemson signed in a while. So, I mean, we'll see. Top 15 preseason was way off. Half of the 16 to 25 are in the top 10 now. What a bad top 25. Can't believe people get excited about them. I've always been in favor of waiting until after week 4 or whatever, wait a few weeks into the season, then put the first poll out. Preseason polls are so heavily weighted by what a team did the previous season. It's just, and brand recognition, which they're always going to have those kind of biases factored in. But I would much rather, see the first poll come out after week 4, sometime late December, or maybe even a little later. How about week 6, early October? I might get on board with that even more so than week 4. Do I think Denson will take the QB1 spot when Cade leaves? No. Again, I think Clemson's going to go get a quarterback out of the portal. I wholeheartedly believe that. Doesn't mean I think they're going to go spend $4 or $5 million on a quarterback, but I believe they're going to go get a guy that has, at least can start next year. We'll see if they target a guy that's got multiple years left. That'll give you an idea of what they envision Denson's future being. But there's a lot to like about Denson, man. I mean, he's electric. Like, I think Dabo even said it last night on his teleconference. He's electric with the ball in his hands. But you also got to remember the fact that it was Furman. It was a wore-down Furman defense who was rolling backups in, by the time Denson came in. We're talking about a FCS team playing a bunch of backups in the fourth quarter of a game that had been over for a while. I mean, I think those are things you have to remember. But I also think that he's still got some growth when it comes to the passing game. He's still got some developing to do. How long before we get a clue about what instincts Dabo has been ignoring? You might not ever know what he was talking about, specifically. Now this is just me. To me, listening to those comments that day, to me, they came off to me as more as just kind of sending a message to the administration more so than anything else. I might be way off base on that, but that's kind of how they came off to me. Excuse me. Again, no football coach, or at least no head football coach, at least at that level, a program that's viewed as one of the better programs in the country, regardless of what's happened the last 2-3 seasons. Or let's just say no head coach that's had as much success as Dabo Swinney's had wants, non-football people coming in and telling him how to run this program, or not necessarily telling him how to run his program, but saying, hey, maybe you need to look at doing this. Maybe you need to change how you're doing this. That I don't know. I could see a head coach of that stature kind of taking that personally. And to me, that's more of what that was about. It's kind of like if you listen to Dabo's presser last Tuesday, he really talked a lot about recruiting and the portal. And you listen to him, and it's the same talking points. And here comes the narrative. Sweeney's never changing. He's not changing his stance on this, changing his stance on that. When some of the things they're doing behind the scenes, just directly conflicts with that. So, but we gotta just wait and see how it plays out. But you might not ever know what he was talking about specifically. Yeah, this right here can't even run between the tackles against Furman. I wouldn't mind seeing Denson and Cade on the field together, use as a decoy, and try to run around the edge. Yeah, I did. Look, not a thing wrong with putting a package together for Denson for this game. That might be something they could have looked at for a matter of fact. We know they looked at that and actually did it for the SMU game. Run him out there one play, and he gets a 2-yard gain, and we never see him again. That was a day you probably could have used him a little bit more. Obviously, you can't go over to 4 games while you're redshirting him during the regular season. But, yeah, with Clemson's issues running the ball between the tackles, not a thing wrong with putting some type of package together involving Denson to see if you can kind of create a spark and get something going. Seeing if I can pull up these numbers here because I saw them about Clemson inability to run it between the tackles against Furman. And now I can't find where I saw it. Here you go. Chapel Fowler is a good follow on Twitter. He actually put this up. Clemson's offense was stuffed for no gain or negative yardage on 4 of its first 12 runs and 7 of 31 overall against Furman. The Tigers were 0 for 5 in power rushing scenarios, rushes with 2 or fewer yards that were converted for first down or a touchdown. So 0 for 5 in those power rushing situations where you needed 2 or fewer yards to get the first down or the touchdown. That's embarrassing, man. I'm telling you, I've just not been overly impressed with the offensive line when Sadler and Sewell's playing. And man, we're talking about 2 guys that were pretty highly regarded coming out of high school. Denson is going to be another Shedeur Sanders problem. Fans are going to cry until he starts. Yes, they are. That's already started. So I guess that would be my man here says he believes Denson leaves. If he does, then that's a scenario you don't have to worry about. But yeah, whoever comes here next year, the first signs of struggle or whatever, man, that's all you're going to hear about. Where's Chris Denson? Where's Chris Denson? Even though we've not really, seen him try to throw the ball down the field or really run the offense in a high leverage situation. Those are things we have not seen. Do I think we get a QB and running back in the portal? I'm definitely on the quarterback, and I lean towards yes on the running backs because I think, you lose Adam Randall, and I think you're going to lose at least one more. So you need a veteran to pair with whoever stays. You're not even signing one in 26. That's a necessity. Absolutely. Recruiting? No, there's not been a whole lot of recruiting to talk about. Again, Clemson's kind of hit the pause button on 27, and with the way the portal window is this year, it kind of allows you to do that. You have the early signing period coming up first week of December. Portal window doesn't open up until a few weeks after that. So then you can get your high school class signed, and if there's one area or two you need to address in the February signing period, you can still do that. But you can get your high school class signed pretty much for the most part in the early signing period. See what needs you still have, and you know what you need to do in the portal. And then whatever you do in the portal, if you feel like you have another need, you can try and address it in February with a high school guy, but there's not going to be hardly anybody left. Looks like, 3-star cornerback Julian Peterson, the former Penn State commit, looks like he's probably North Carolina bound from the sound of it. For some reason, those former Penn State cornerback commits love North Carolina and that crap show that Belichick's running there, but kind of gives you an idea of they're throwing some money at those kids. But that's about it as far as recruiting goes. The local kid, Trey Wembley, wide receiver out of Daniel. Yeah, he goes to Daniel. Announced at the end of the week he's reclassifying from 28 to 27. Announced a Clemson offer. His daddy is not on the coaching staff, but he works. He's I forget what his title is, but he does something with the football team. He's been there a couple of years now. Wembley's been to most every home game this year. Before he reclassed, he was considered top 100 guy in the 28 class and one of the top receivers in the country. Sammy needs to be on the field spying on Sellers all game. Sammy just needs to be on the field all 4 quarters. You can't play him the first 3 and take him off because you think they might start doing something different in the 4th quarter, man. I still can't wrap my head around that. But if you're going to use a spy, it can't be Wade Woodass. Let's just say that. And they tried to spy Sellers. Matter of fact, that scoring play, the game-winning touchdown that people always moan and groan about how there wasn't a spy. Woodass was the spy. Go back and watch that play. He just gets washed up. He gets caught up in the trash. He was not very effective at being the spy. If we can stop Sellers from running the ball, we will win. I think you also got to make sure you don't let Nick Harbor get behind you a couple of times. I don't know who's gonna. He's so much better now than he was this time last year. He's really developed into a really good receiver, man, and he's just got elite speed. And he's probably just scratching the surface of what he's going to be. I don't know that they've got an answer for him. And with the bust they've had on the back end, that to me, that's a concern. But yeah, I mean, to your point, yeah, I mean, the first and foremost, you cannot let Sellers run all over you. Somehow, some way, you got to keep him contained. You cannot leave those running lanes open the way you did against him last year. I think Ashton Hampton has been really good the last few weeks. I think he and Terrell played a lot better. If you look at the Louisville game, and the Florida State game, they had some issues in those SMU and Duke losses. I mean, it was the safeties had a lot of the whole back seven had issues in those games at times. But yeah, I mean, I think Hampton's played better the last 2-3 weeks for sure. I think Terrell has. I think the whole secondary has kind of been a little more stable with the emergence of Corey and Gibson. Team Kelly's, he played, I think, 2 snaps at Louisville. Gibson kind of coming into his own down the stretch has brought a little stability back there. And they're going to need it Saturday night or Saturday afternoon for sure. Is the staff going after the defensive end that decommitted from Cal? I don't know. We'll see. We're talking about Cam Brooks, 3-star guy out of Georgia. He visited Clemson for the elite retreat, was scheduled to be in Clemson for the big official visit weekend. Then, he just abruptly out of the blue committed to Cal after an unofficial visit in April. Cal fires their coach yesterday, and last night, Brooks says he's decommitting. So we'll see, because that's a position of need for Clemson in this class. They still need another end after Dre Quinn decommitted back in September. But no matter what you do when it comes to the high school, stuff, Clemson absolutely still needs a defensive end out of the portal. A minimum of 1. They might need 2. Denson will be the starter next year. I might take that bet. I might take that bet. Is it just Cade, or is it the OC calls in the red zone that has kept Clemson from scoring effectively for South Carolina? I think it's been a little bit of both. I mean, just look at Cade. Last year, they're pushing down the field to try to score the game-winning touchdown at the very least. You got a very manageable field goal to tie it up and send it to overtime, and it's covered up. And for whatever reason, Cade decides to take the check down guy. He's going to throw it to Maffa, and even that throws off target. He throws it behind him. Maffa gets his hand on it, tips it up, and is picked off. Game over. So, I mean, but it's also been some of the play calling too. And it's not just against South Carolina. This offense as a whole has struggled in the red zone all 3 years under Riley. They're like, or before the Furman game, they were like 61%, on scoring touchdowns when they had it in the red zone. That's not where you want to be. I think that's one of the downsides to running a scheme that's got, so many West Coast style tendencies in it, man. The more the field shrinks, the harder it gets. Davidson has been a disappointment for the basketball team. Davidson is, when I watched this team earlier in the year, first couple of home games and even the exhibition, I wondered about his level of physicality, being able to hang with some of the bigger, stronger big men he's going to go up against. And so far, he is not. He's not fared very well in those type of situations. But I think Carter Welling has. I think RJ Godfrey absolutely has. I think Waleen's been okay for the most part. They found a way to overcome it. But yeah, Davidson's not a guy that's gonna outbang a guy or outbang some physical dude down low. It's not his forte. The net rankings, the first ones usually come out sometime in early December. I don't know if there's an exact date, but by the middle of December they'll be out. But I also, going back to Davidson, I didn't watch the Georgia game. I had a family thing. Yeah, I was supposed to stay in Clemson through Tuesday because I had some stuff I needed to take care of. Matter of fact, while I'm on that subject, next Monday night we're going to do the show from Keowee out by the pickleball courts. So if we got a different background next week, that's going to be why. Ashby's going to be with me. We're going to still have kind of a similar setup. We might not take as many questions as we normally do, but we're still going to keep the format mostly the same. We're going to a lot of that. We're going to play by ear, but my wife, we had a family thing for Thanksgiving yesterday. So when my wife asked me Friday before I left, she asked me when I was coming back, and I said probably Tuesday night because I got something I need to do up there, and I usually like to go to the media stuff on the Tuesday before the South Carolina game. And she said, "So you're not going to be home Sunday for your aunt's Thanksgiving dinner?" And I said, "I prefer not to be." And she said, "Well, I think you need to." And that's kind of her sign for telling me to get my tail home. First time she said it all year, and I've been gone a lot. So I got home, I think about 3 a.m. Saturday night. I think I finally went to sleep about 5. Woke up 2.5 hours later. I was like a zombie all day yesterday. But anyways, my wife's sick. She can't even go. So I come all the way home to go to that thing because she wanted me to, and then she couldn't even go. I forgot why I even told that story now, but that kept me from watching the Georgia game yesterday. I didn't get to watch the Georgia game yesterday because I went to that thing. I went to that dinner. I got to watch a little bit of the first half on my phone, but that was it. I see somebody saying that Davidson had like 9 rebounds or something yesterday. Yeah, here we go. Davidson had 9 boards yesterday. Yeah, I'm gonna need to see more than that. I'm gonna need to see more of that. Clemson players opting out. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this a little bit ago. There's going to be some, yeah. I think a guy like Cade will probably play because it just seems like the Cade thing to do. I could see a guy like Adam Randall playing. I could, on the other side of that, I could see guys like TJ Parker, Peter Woods, Avion Terrell. I could see those guys like that opting out. There's just really no advantage to them playing in this game. You get hurt and it can cost you a lot of money, particularly guys that are going to be day 1 or day 2 draft picks. Not sure Riley didn't ruin Cade. Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. Cade has a tendency to make the mental mistake at the wrongest time. I don't know that that's the quarterback coach. I don't know that that's the play caller. I think that's the player. Could Cade have excelled a little more under a different scheme, different play caller? Possibly. But I don't know that it eliminates the what Dabo Sweeney called the brain farts. I'm sorry. I know it was Furman, but Vizina didn't do a freaking thing against Furman, and Denson moved the ball all over him. What the hell are these coaches seeing that the rest of us don't? I mean, are you suggesting Denson should have been the starting quarterback? The guy needed a year. You haven't seen him do anything but run the ball. You haven't seen him throw it, particularly down the field. I mean, you've seen him throw a couple screen passes, but that's it. You haven't seen him do anything under pressure. You saw him play against a FCS team that was beat down in the fourth quarter and was already had a bunch of backups on the field themselves. If you're making the argument that Denson should be the backup, maybe at this point in the season, I could get on board with that, but I don't think you burn a year of eligibility just so you can list a guy as a backup. I also don't think if you truly envision him as the backup, you might not tell people that either. I don't think Denson's quite there yet. I think this is going to be a big spring for him. Maybe he can get there before the start of next season, but I don't see him being the starter next year either. Denoff with multiple big plays. I tell you what, Denoff's quietly had a pretty good season. I don't know that he plays quite as much as he did last year. The rotations, they've kind of been a little bit different, rotating guys in and out. But he's had a pretty solid year. I think Rump's done a really good job with him, kind of the same way he has with Lawson. See if I can find it here right quick. Yeah, Denoff, man, he's played 252 snaps. He's only got one tackle for loss and one pass breakup, man. But he's been more effective this year, and they'll need him to step up with Lawson being out. I'm nervous about Contain setting an edge with all the injuries and Sellers Harbor on the other side. I would absolutely be nervous about Harbor getting behind the secondary. But they've not really leaned on Sellers to run the ball a ton this year. They just haven't, not compared to the way they did last year, anyways. I think he's averaging less than 2 yards a carry, but not to say he can't absolutely whip you if you leave him a lane open. Don't get me wrong. I didn't watch their game against Coastal because it was going on at the same time as the Furman game. So I'm kind of anxious to see what kind of plan they put together and how much different it looks than what they were trying to do when Shula was calling the plays. Because this guy's basically, auditioning for the job there, the OC job there. So I'm kind of anxious to see what they do there. But yeah, you absolutely got to be able to keep him in the pocket. You saw last year what will happen if you don't. And it didn't matter that they tried to spy him sometimes, man. The spy didn't work. You cannot leave those running lanes open. And Clemson has been prone to getting pinched, on some of those backside runs. They have definitely got to be disciplined. What do you think is the necessary thing Clemson should do against South Carolina but will not do? I'm going to say keeping Sellers contained. I don't think I think he's going to be the difference, or he's going to be a difference maker. And not necessarily on quarterback draws or design runs. It's gonna be those plays that break down when he gets pressured or there's nobody open and he's got to make something happen. Those are the types of situations where this defense has gotten pinched, a time or two this season. And I could see that happening a couple of times on Saturday. And if it does, that's going to be bad news because I just don't know that this Clemson offense is going to be able to score enough points to beat a South Carolina team if you're allowing Sellers to kind of, break off big plays in the running game against you. If he has one or two, fine. But if you start talking about 3, 4, 5, you're going to have some problems. Rivalry game is much bigger than the bowl game. It's a must win. It's 100% bigger than the bowl game. That bowl game doesn't mean anything. Nothing. And again, you're going to have guys that opt out that aren't going to care about that thing. And if Clemson were to lose to South Carolina, you're probably going to have even more opt-outs and kids caring even less about that thing. With the way this season is, and this is true for both teams. South Carolina's got 4 wins now. Clemson's, playing for win number 7. These were teams that were considered top 15 teams coming into the season. Clemson was almost considered a lock for the playoff. A lot of people liked South Carolina's chances of making their first appearance in the playoff. It just has not gone according to plan for either team. So yeah, this is the coup de grace for both schools. They need it. Clemson needs it. South Carolina needs it. It's a must win for both of them. I mean, for Clemson, I was talking about this with somebody earlier today. For South Carolina fans, it kind of feels like a lot of them, particularly now that they've had a couple assistants fired, they're just kind of ready to get to the end. They're not going to a bowl game. Let's get to the end and see, who's leaving, who we're going to get out of the portal, and what new coaches are we getting. For Clemson fans, it's kind of similar, even though you're going to play in a bowl game. Nobody cares about that. Don't get me wrong, man. You absolutely 100% want to go to one because you've got that long streak of consecutive, bowls going. I think it's one of the longest in the country of bowl eligible seasons. So you want to keep that going, but nobody's going to care about the actual game. And Clemson fans also want to know what coaches are getting fired, who's getting hired, who's going to leave for the portal. Is Dabo finally going to, dive headfirst into that thing and bring, more than 2 or 3 guys in? So, you got both fan bases are kind of looking forward to those things, but the winner's going to absolutely at least go into the offseason with some positive momentum. Even if Clemson wins against South Carolina and loses the bowl game, you're still going to go into the offseason with better momentum than you'd have if you lose that game. Let's say it like that. Do you think they will eventually cancel bowl games now with a lot of kids opting out? No. They make too much money and the ratings, people watch them. Now, when they stop making money, yeah, they'll probably go away. But until then, we'll still have them. Do you think any QBs will transfer out? I think it's a possibility, yeah. Put yourself in Chris Vizina's shoes. You've now been here 3 years. You have patiently waited your turn. We haven't even talked about him looking fairly terrible against Furman. But put yourself in his shoes. You've been here 3 years. You patiently waited your turn. All signs always pointed to you being the starter in 27. And now the staff sits you down and says, hey, we feel like we need to go get a quarterback out of the portal to come in and compete with you next year. You know, that to me, they're not going to push him out the door, but that's basically saying, hey, if you want to play next year, you need to look elsewhere. With Denson, it's a little different. It's just going to depend on, you know, if a school or two makes him an offer he can't refuse. Again, he has hired Drew Rosenhaus as his agent. He did that weeks ago. I think it was Rosenhaus anyways. It's one of those big-time – he's got a big-time agent. Let's just say that. I mean, if a school comes and makes you an offer you can't refuse, I mean, yeah, I think it's a distinct possibility that they lose one of these guys, possibly both, because I don't think either guy's the starter next year. A loss to South Carolina will define the season as a complete meltdown. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you are already there. This season has already been a complete meltdown, no matter what happens Saturday. 7-5, 6-6. There ain't a whole lot of difference when you're talking about a team that was picked, you know, to be a national title contender. Do I think Dabo would consider Chip Kelly? I do not. A good portal QB is 2 to 4 million. Yeah, there's a big difference between 4 and 2. I mean, big difference. Those top tier guys are probably going to cost 4 or 5. There might be 1 or 2 that cost even more than that. You know, but you start talking about in the 2 to 3 range, 2 to 1.8, between 1.8 and 3, something like that. You can find a quarterback. You might have to look in that tier below that top tier guys, but there's been a lot of good quarterbacks come out of that second tier over the past few years. Sammy's family loves Clemson. His brother is committed to. Yeah, that they do. Absolutely. Again, I will never say never, but I have a hard time seeing him go. Don't you think it was odd that he pulled Cade off the field for his ovation after an incompletion on a deep ball? Or maybe that was fitting for the season. Yeah, I think, you know, the play was there, man. He put a little too much air under that ball. How many times have we said that, you know, over his career? He needed to put a little bit more juice on that one because Betancourt was open, but yeah, it probably would have been a little more fitting if you just call a running play, let him, you know, do a little QB draw, pick up a yard or two, and then do it. But I did think it was pretty cool to call the timeout and let him, you know, say his goodbyes, and he did that with the defensive guys later in the game too. I mean, he did that with the Power Ranger. He called a timeout and let the Power Rangers, you know, take a bow during their final home game. So that's something he's done that at times in the past. But yeah, it would have hit a lot better had he hit that pass. You know, but to me, I don't know how many people is going to remember the play more so than the moment after anyways. But if I'm making a decision, I probably just let him run it and then do it. Denson equals Richard Moncrief 2.0. Man, we're going way back. Fans don't want to buy their jerseys for Christmas or buy their kids' jerseys for Christmas because they're scared the star players leaving in the portal. Sad times. Yep. That is the day, or that is the era we are living in now. Denson passes didn't look like he have a lot of zip on the ball. I don't know that I'd say he's got elite arm strength or anything like that, but yeah, I remember watching him the first day the first time he was practicing, and the ball was coming out of his hand pretty wobbly, not a lot of heat on it. But that's stuff that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's kind of exactly the way Dabo said it last night. He's still maturing as a passer. There's still some things he needs to get ironed out with his mechanics, which will absolutely help the ball come out of his hand better and probably get some more oomph on it. But again, at the same time, the only thing they ask him to do is throw a couple of screen passes and a little 2-yard RPO that he flicked out there to Brooking. The throw he made to Shefflin look absolutely kind of all discombobulated, but I don't know. It just looked weird to me the way it his delivery did, anyways. The way it came out of his hand, but sometimes a left-hander can look like that. But yeah, I think he's still got some work to do on his mechanics for sure. Fletcher Cothran. I think I got that pulled up right here. Give me 1 second. I can look. I haven't really looked at the snap counts from the Furman game. Cothran. 14 snaps against Furman. He's only played 19 all year. We have to do everything we can to stop teams from trying to pick our bones clean in the offseason. It depends on what you mean by picking your bones clean, because I think there's probably some guys on the roster that they will probably have no problem letting walk. This roster needs an overhaul, man. I mean, there's some dudes you absolutely don't want to get away, but I think there's also some guys that they can live with losing too. Yeah, I don't know who's going to be an option or not. I would imagine the kid from Western Carolina is going to be a hot commodity. He might end up having a pretty hefty price tag, but he's a guy that I'm watching. I'll say that because he's from right down the road. He absolutely fits a need. So you just have to see what happens. Think Tate Reynolds will end up moving to baseball with these QB dynamics? I don't think so. Not based on the conversations I've had with him anyways. I don't know. We'll see what he does this baseball season and what kind of prospect he ends up being on a national level. But I've had multiple conversations with him, and he's been dead set on playing football. He told me personally, this is what he told me. I don't know what he told anybody else, but he told me he wanted to play baseball for one season at least, and then he'd go from there because he knew it was going to be hard to do both, being a quarterback at the same time. This is kind of what I envision. I kind of think if you're Dabo, you go and get a quarterback that's got a year, maybe 2 years left, just kind of a stopgap to bridge that gap between until you can get one of those younger guys like a Denson or a Tate or even a Hughley ready to take over. But as we sit here today, I don't know, man. He would end up, if he gets passed by at Clemson, maybe he thinks about going and playing quarterback somewhere else, more so than just going full-time baseball. But probably a discussion we should revisit after his baseball season, his senior baseball season, if he even plays it. I don't even know that he's going to play his senior years. I think he's an early enrollee, if I'm remembering right. So he might be done, but just based off the conversations I've had with him, I would lean towards saying no. Do I think Dabo's going to leave for another job? No. McLean's podcast today, he mentioned Chad Morris as a coordinator who will bring a QB with him. He didn't say Clemson was an option for them, but it did make me think. Who's the QB? I don't know, man. If you're a Clemson fan, man, I think you got to look forward, not backwards. And I think Chad Morris is looking backwards. I touched on it last week. I think Morris was great for Clemson, in 2011. He was everything they needed him to be. I don't think he is what they need right now. I also think there's a reason he's not had a coordinator job in recent years. Chip Kelly, the new OC. No, I don't see that happening. I think if you're Dabo, you've got to find somebody that brings a little bit of stability, and I just don't think that he does that. The guy moves around so often, man. He's kind of like Chad Morris. He's always looking for the next job. I said, no, I do not think he'll be an option. I've been wrong before, but I don't think I will be this time. A lot of Tiger fans who know ball really want Dabo to snap up. Yeah, I'm sure they do. He's going to be one of the hottest commodities on the market, man, when it comes to quarterbacks. I mean, he's only a redshirt sophomore, so he's got 2 more years left. I mean, the guy has absolutely killed it, man, this year. His numbers are eye-popping. I think he's only thrown 2 interceptions. Yeah, 38 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Who do I think plays in the ACC championship game? I'm going with Pitt. I would have said Georgia Tech last week, man, but golly, I'm telling you, Pitt's been a different team since they switched quarterbacks. He didn't play that well versus Notre Dame, but for the most part, he's played pretty well. He might be a guy worth keeping an eye on if he enters the portal. Yeah, I would have said Georgia Tech last week. I think it's going to be Pitt and Virginia. I think Virginia beats Virginia Tech, and I think it's going to be them two playing in the ACC champion. Without going into details, in your opinion, how many staff changes? A few. I think there's going to be a few. I think there'll be more than one on both sides of the ball. I think there'll be more on the defensive side. I just don't think all those guys work well together. I'd probably say at least 4. Is it Luke or is it the players who just don't have the ability? I would just say go and look at Luke's history and what he's done before he got to Clemson, and that would probably answer your question. It's absolutely not him. There's a reason why he's considered one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. Mike Reed's considered one of the best cornerback coaches in the country. His players have not really lived up to that billing this year. Clemson's offensive line has been hampered by injury all year. Started from the very first game with Tristan Lee. They've had a hard time keeping the same 5 guys on the field. When you finally, and not to mention Walker Parks getting hurt in camp, who's barely been able to play this year. You finally get a starting 5 that's starting to show some progress with Lee and Jacobs at guard, Lanthicum, and Parks and Blake Miller. And it only lasts 3 games. And Parks and Jacobs go down hurt. So to me, that's a big part of it. Another big part of it these are not the guys that Luke recruited. I also don't think these guys necessarily, or their strengths are necessarily, or let's say I don't think Riley his scheme really plays to their strengths. I don't think their strength is getting out and pulling. I think they're probably better with the zone stuff and, going ahead on that. But I 100% would say it's not Matt Luke. I'm pretty anxious. I think Clemson needs to go with all they're losing off the offensive line. I think they need to go get at least 1 lineman, maybe even 2 in the portal, possibly even a center, because if you don't, you're probably looking at Sewell as your center next year. But, man, there's a lot of good young talent on that offensive line, and you got 6 really good ones coming in this current class. Yeah, I am anxious to see once those 6 that are, once they get to campus and have a year under their belts. Jacobs will kind of be in his third year. Easton Ware will be in his 3rd year. That's the guy we ain't even talking about because he got hurt before the season started, and he was going to be into 2 deep. I think the future's bright there. I honestly do. If they can find a way to keep them healthy, man, because you've been absolutely ravaged by injury the last 2 years. I guess Denson got everybody off the pyramid train. I didn't even think about that. That's a good one. They try to go to Denson as a Wildcat, you'll just see South Carolina go to a bear front based on what they have on film. Denson package better have some creativity. Yeah, you can't just, run him out there and let him run draw every time or let him run a draw every time. That's that. Get no argument from me. I think if you let CV prepare for a game like he did for SMU, he will play well. He had 317 passing yards in his first start against one of the worst pass defenses in the country, too, and he sucked for a quarter. I take that back. He was not very good for a quarter. I don't think you can go into next season. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I don't think you can go into next season selling this fan base on hope and potential at quarterback, particularly not with the inconsistency we've seen from Vizina this season. Yeah, he He looked good for 3 quarters against SMU. Most quarterbacks to play against that defense have looked good against them. I think you have to go get a proven guy, and I am very confident that that's the plan. I'm worried about TJ Moore leaving. If I'm a Clemson fan, I'd be worried about TJ Moore leaving too. I think there are very few players that are what I would term untouchable. Yeah, I don't even know if maybe Sammy, but outside of that, I'm telling you, man, there are going to be some guys that leave that are going to surprise you. Dabo said in his presser last night that spring ball at the QB position will be interesting with Vina, Denson, and the freshman coming in. I don't think he said his name because he can't. He's not signed yet. Makes me think he won't go to the portal for one. Don't make me think that because he's not going to tell you his plan. So I absolutely 100% fully believe they're going shopping for a quarterback. Now, they might not end up signing one, but that don't mean they're not looking for one. Much made of Dabo's comments about not forcing players out. Do you think rev share allocations can reshape the roster without directly showing people the door? Do we value players appropriately? Yeah, I mean, rev share doesn't say you have to pay everybody. Not everybody's getting paid, substantial money. And while Dabo's not going to cut somebody, like he says, it's at graduation till we part. Do we part or whatever? That doesn't mean that they won't sit a guy down and say, hey, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you want to play, you might need to look elsewhere. That's not the same thing as cutting somebody because you're giving them the choice. So it's not like they won't nudge guys towards the portal because that has happened in the past. I can tell you that for a fact. But yeah, with 105 spots, yeah, it absolutely can be done. Not all 105 of those players are, making bank. Stop Harbor by not giving sellers time to look for him. 100%. But at the same time, you cannot allow him an open lane to escape. So let's add that on there. Great job by the Tigers in Charleston, changing my mind even further about Brownell. Yeah, I think Brownell gets a bad rap, man. And I totally understand why. But I think to me, and y'all can disagree. A lot of people do. I think he should get a 100% pass for pretty much the first half of his career. He's got nothing. He comes to Clemson. Oliver Purnell leaves him nothing. The cupboard's pretty much bare. The facilities are some of the worst in the ACC, and that's what he's got to sell for the first few years. He finally gets some money invested, the facilities upgraded. Then they don't even get to play home games, for a long time, whatever, a year and a half, whatever it was. Since they've got those new facilities, the results have been vastly different. And since the inception of the portal, man, he's mastered the art. He's absolutely mastered it. If this team makes the NCAA tournament this year and wins a game or two, after only bringing back one player or one contributor from last year's team. That's pretty impressive, man. I think Brownell is right where he should be. And for an early part, during a part of his early tenure, I had kind of soured on him a little bit too. But after I started doing this for a living and got a little bit more insight into some things behind the scenes, to me, he gets a pass for about the first half of his career at Clemson. I don't know, man. He's definitely a guy I would keep an eye on. Only thing I hate about Clemson sometimes is that we love switching some player positions, like Tink. That's really not a DB. He is a receiver. Tink was actually brought into Clemson knowing that he was going to play DB probably. He's a developmental guy. He's definitely not a nickel. I don't know if he'd be any better at corner. I just don't know that he's got the size. I don't know that he'd be any better at receiver. I think too much gets made about changing positions and stuff. Like with Adam Randall, I think that's been pretty successful. Matter of fact, I wish they'd have done it a year earlier. Golly, I just totally lost my train of thought there. Same thing with Hannafin. They signed him to play DB, but he wanted to play receiver, so they let him play it for a year, and then moved him. And me, that ain't that big a deal. Clemson's biggest problem at DB has been losing them after you get them committed. Somebody else coming poaching them away. There's one staff that can get a big like Davidson playing better down low. It's Brownell. Oh, I 100% agree with that, man. He's had some success with big guys, man. Going back to his early days with players like Landry, Noko, and Sidi Jate. Those are two that come to me right off the top of my head. But yeah, he's had some pretty good success, developing some big men. Spot on with that one. South Carolina was to blow Clemson out. I bet Dabo blows everything up. Win or lose that game doesn't change anything that's going to happen in the offseason. Everyone is treating Denson like Cade when DJ was here. Don't you know, man, the backup quarterbacks are the most popular guy on the team? South Carolina's offense has been better since firing Shula. I know they looked absolutely jam up against Texas A&M when all they needed was one score in the second half and couldn't do jack squat. I don't put a whole lot of stock into beating up on a not so good Coastal Carolina team that is banged up beyond recognition. Sorry. And if you want to make the argument about what South Carolina did in the first half against A&M, I don't even buy that because that was pretty much A&M self-imploding. 3 turnovers. Quarterback looked terrible in the first half. When he did hit his receivers, they dropped them. One of the South Carolina scores came on a scoop and score. It was more about what A&M was giving them. Again, I doesn't mean Clemson's going to win, but there ain't nothing scary about South Carolina's offense. Nothing. Denson's arm strength doesn't look strong enough. No, he does not have like elite level arm strength. We talked about this earlier. He's still got some stuff to clean up with his mechanics, and it's not just his throwing motion, which is very elongated. He's got that long winding motion, or just use my left hand, long winding motion, which a lot of left-handers tend to have. But he's got some work. He's got some work to do with his footwork too, man. He's flat-footed when he throws the ball. And I don't think you want your quarterbacks throwing it flat-footed. He's not ready for prime time. So no, absolutely. Clemson can't turn the ball over. Clemson's 3-1 when they win the turnover battle this year. If they're going to have any shot at winning this game, they absolutely have to force a couple and protect the football. If they lose the turnover margin, there's slim chance that they win that game. Slim. Seller's really going to leave. I have a hard time seeing him leave. Like I said earlier, I've been wrong before, but that's a Gamecock family, man. Those are South Carolina fans, have been their whole lives. He stayed at South Carolina for less money last year. I have a hard time seeing him leave, but again, never say never. Clemson is not going to be in the Gator Bowl. I don't think they would have regardless. They were just there the year before last. They don't like to have them back to back or too close together. I don't take anything from the comments. I addressed this earlier. He's not going to tell you his plan. I don't care. I know he said last Tuesday that he will tell us all, and we'll be able to advertise it for him. No, he's not. He's not going to tell you what he's going to do. Oh, man, when you're over here saying that Clemson barely beat Furman, man, you lose all credibility with me, dude. They won by 35 points. The game was never in doubt. Sorry. Realistically, how many games should Clemson have won? Clemson should have beaten LSU. Clemson should have beaten Syracuse. Clemson should have beaten Duke. Clemson should have beaten SMU. And they probably should have beaten Georgia Tech. No, those deals were for just this year. No, they were not 2-year deals, and it wouldn't matter if they were, man. It'd be hard to enforce them. Ruby Ridge wants to see Colorado in the bowl game. Hey, that would make for some interesting storylines there with Dabo and Prime. When do you think coaching shakeups happen? On your thoughts on it happening before the portal window opens? It will 100% happen before the portal window opens. You can't wait till after that. You can't do it. The portal window doesn't open till January. This is stuff you need to get taken care of ASAP. I would not be surprised to start hearing stuff next week before the bowl game. You might not hear about replacements, but you might start hearing about who's on their way out next week after the bowl game. But you'll know who's on the way out for sure well before the portal window opens. I mean, you can't go recruiting in the portal and not tell a guy who his position coach is going to be. You've got to know that stuff before that. The massive number of coaches fired, does that oversaturate the portal and drive prices down? Yeah, I've talked to an agent or two. I don't see the market going down though. Not if the agents have their way, anyways. Does Willie Corn have the qualifications for OC? Not in my opinion. I mean, for a long time, it was Chadwell that was calling the plays, even though Corn was the OC. I don't know if I don't think it's that way now, but for a long time it was. Clemson needs somebody that can come, you need somebody, a veteran that is established and that can come in and once again overhaul the scheme. I don't know that Corn's that guy, just like I didn't think Streeter was. I actually talked about this earlier. Put yourself in Vizina's shoes, and you get sat down. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, and the staff says, "Hey, we're going to bring in we're going to try to bring in a portal QB to come in here and compete with you next year." You put yourself in his shoes. I mean, I can easily see Vizina hitting the door. He ran the Clemson offense like we haven't seen since Lawrence. Yeah, I ain't buying into that either. I mean, you're talking, and your next thing is, does he throw the ball down the field well? You don't even know what kind of thrower he is, yet you're sitting there saying he ran the offense better than anybody since Lawrence. All they did was draw up some quarter QB draws for him. That's against a bunch of backup defenders from a FCS team. Doesn't help the usual chuckleheads on Twitter have been harassing Barnes' dad on Twitter I'm not surprised. He kind of brought that on himself though. He's got to grit your teeth and bear it, man. He kind of opened himself up for that. What happened with Purnell? He kind of left in the middle of the night, took another job. Didn't even really tell the players he was leaving. Thoughts on TJ Parker's draft stock? It's taking a hit. Hard to say how much of one, but a lot of times these guys are going to be drafted on potential, not so much what they did in their final year. I wouldn't be shocked if he drops out of the first round, though. Dabo is going to want to run the spread, 100%. I can't answer that question about Tristan Smith. I feel like he should get one. Looking at some of the other guys that have gotten one, due to playing some JUCO. I don't know why he wouldn't, and they did. That's about the best answer I can give you. Do I think he? I don't think Helt's going to enter the draft. So let's say that. I lean towards thinking he'll probably be back. I think he really likes it at Clemson, man. He's had some success this year, but I also think, he could benefit from another year and really help his draft stock next year. Been having some issues with my Facebook stream tonight. I keep getting these messages popping up on me. Good Lord, it's already been an hour and 45 minutes. Next week, we are going to be live from Keowee. Ashby's going to be here with me, or be there with me. Starting defensive tackles next year. That's going to depend on who's back, and I don't think there's a guarantee pretty much on anybody being back. If you get Green and Adams back, and if you get everybody back, I don't think you got to go to the portal at tackle. You lose Woods and you lose Capehart, but everybody else is back. Plus, who you bring in the 26 class, as far as the high school guys, you might not need to go to the portal for a defensive tackle. But if you lose somebody, that changes the whole thing. Now, you're just gonna have to see who's staying and who's going before you know the answers to some of these questions. Yeah, next Monday night, 7:00. We're same format as always. You comment and we'll talk about them. We might not be able to get to as many as we normally do, but Ashby's going to join me, man. We're going to try to get it interactive. We're going to be out at Keowee at the pickleball courts. Hopefully it's not too cold. Last time I looked at the extended forecast, it wasn't supposed to be. But we'll be right back here next Monday, 7:00. Want to thank our sponsors over at A-Glass, 2 locations in the PD, one in Florence, You can get a hold of them at that number there, and one in Sumter. This is the Sumter number. And one in Florence. All your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair, and you can get yourself a free quote. Look at there. myaGlass.com. How would I evaluate Davidson's season? If we're talking about Gideon Davidson, if I'm him, I'm a little irked that it took so long to get me really into rotation, to be quite honest. It's one thing to lean on your starter when you got nothing but inexperience behind him heavily, against LSU. But then against App State, Troy, he gets no love in the Troy game. Then you go out and lose the Georgia Tech game. You're 1-2. Your season's all but over. You lose to Syracuse. You're 1-3. Your season is over. Yet they're still not playing him. He really didn't get real playing time until after the second bye week. And I think it was Dabo and Garrett Riley that actually had to kind of force the issue there. I think the running back rotations have been serious problems last year, this year. So take that for what it's worth. He's a guy you'd hate to lose, but I wouldn't, he's absolutely one I could see them having kind of run off with the way they handled the rotations this year. They might have to do a sale job on him to get him back. Have I heard anything about Ryan Day's son looking at Clemson? No. Clemson's already got their 26 quarterbacks. They've already got their 27 quarterback. They have not set a target for 28. And RJ Day's ain't that his name, RJ Day? I think he's a 27 guy. And right now the plan's only to take one, so. All right, check us out on the site, man, ClemsonInsider.com. We're going to obviously go heavy on the Clemson-South Carolina stuff this week. I told you earlier, if I had to pick it today, I'm leaning towards South Carolina, but we'll see. I still got a few more days to mull it over. If I'd have picked the Louisville game on Monday, I'd have absolutely picked Louisville to win. I didn't decide on picking Clemson until I was writing the story. And sometimes that's how they work. But we'll have you covered all week long. ClemsonInsider.com. No, I don't do Wednesday streams during the season. Will does one on Tuesdays on the TCI channels, but just once a week for me during football season. Maybe if Ashby sticks around with us for another semester. That girl's, she's been burning the candle at both ends. She's doing a radio show on WCCP on Wednesday nights. She's part of the Tiger pregame show on Saturdays. She's doing some other stuff with the Roar. She's interning for a television station. She's interning with us, so she's pushing it, man. But she's fixing to graduate next month. Right now, I think she's planning to stick around with us for at least the next semester, and if she does, we'll see about doing another baseball show on Wednesdays or Thursdays when that time comes. But that was a little. With my travel schedule, that got to be a little rough last year. We're going to see if we can make it work if she sticks around. But no Wednesday streams during the season. You can always go to the site, though, ClemsonInsider.com. You just have to wait till next Monday to get the next stream. And we're going to try to have a little fun with it, man. It's the first time I'll be doing one like live on location. It's easy to do them sitting in your office or sitting in a, foyer somewhere in a condo. It's easy to do them that way, man. So we're gonna try to do it without many hiccups. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're saying when I ain't paying you. I don't know what that means. Our site's free. We don't charge for anything. It's not no memberships or nothing. Even our message board's free. ClemsonInsider.com. But anyways, next Monday, live from Kiowee out at the pickleball courts. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that place, man, but it's where I stay when I'm up there, man. It's a private community, a beautiful place. But that's where we'll be next Monday, 7 p.m. Ashby and myself. Until then, get your fill. ClemsonInsider.com.